Well, hello, Peachtree Corners. It is yours truly, your friendly neighborhood city manager, talking to you on day, I'm not even sure anymore, of our unique stay at home, or now I guess it's officially shelter in place order, as we do what we can to contain and prohibit those who are not necessarily conducting themselves in a responsible way from spreading the coronavirus. So I wanted to talk to you for a couple minutes today as an update from activities over the weekend and kind of talk to you about how we see things happening this week. So let me back up real quick and do a little recap from Friday. As those of you who may have seen the broadcast Friday, I was letting everybody know that at 6 p.m. on Friday, the governor's executive order went into effect. And Governor Kemp issued a statewide shelter-in-place order that went into effect on Friday at 6 p.m. again, and it preempted all local emergency orders that were issued related to COVID-19. And it makes the state of Georgia responsible for all aspects of the implementation of this executive order. The state order supersedes and suspends all previous city or county orders. And as such, the executive order that we issued here in Peachtree Corners was superseded by the state order as well. So because of that, the city is not authorized to enforce our previous executive order, nor to provide any interpretation or guidance on the governor's order. That is reserved for the governor's office and other state agencies like Georgia Emergency Management Agency or the Department of Economic Development. So given that that's the case, if you do have any questions about whether or not your business is considered essential or you should be open, or if a certain activity is proper, or I guess in other cases, if you're wanting to report behavior that is irresponsible and is in violation of the governor's executive order, then you can contact the governor's office a couple of ways. One is the number to call them is 404-656-1776. You can send an email to them at covidcomments@georgia.org. That's COVIDCOMMENTS at Georgia, spelled out GEORGIA.org. So you can send an email to covidcomments@georgia.org, or you can get on the website and do it directly through there. The office of the governor's website is gov.georgia.gov. So that's gov.georgia.gov. So those are the three ways that you can contact the governor's office. Again, if you want to report violation of the executive order, if you have any questions or need any interpretation. Now, speaking of interpretations, a couple things also to keep in mind is the governor's executive order does differ from the one that the city issued, because it does not break things down into really what we had, which was two distinct lists. You were either an essential business or you were a non-essential business. And you were on one of those two lists, and that was it. The governor's has a couple of different ones. It actually has a list specifically for companies that are not authorized to stay open and in operation. And then it has essential services and critical infrastructure, and then businesses that are operating with minimum basic operations. Now, it's important to note that under the governor's executive order, it really falls down to this. If an activity has less than 10 people, then it's essentially an activity that can happen And from a business standpoint, as long as you're providing service to the public or a value to your organization type of thing, you could be in operation. Again, if there's any question, you can contact the state. And if it's more than 10 people, then you just have to maintain at least 6 feet between persons at all times. So it's important to just know that the 10 people and 6 foot rule applies. So no business establishment, for-profit, nonprofit, corporation, organization, or municipal government is allowed to have more than 10 people gathering in a single location unless there are at least 6 feet between each person at all times. This rule does apply to church services and funeral services for those of you who have questions about that. Now, there have been some questions about what happens if I violate the terms of the order. Just know that the executive order from the governor does create a violation, or violating the executive order from the governor does create a scenario where you're committing a misdemeanor, which is a crime in the state of Georgia. So for instance, if you are not sheltering in place at home and you fall into none of the 4 exceptions to that, which would be essential services, critical infrastructure, necessary travel, or business under the minimum basic operations. If you are not sheltering in place and you're not one of those 4, then you were found in violation, you would receive a warning from law enforcement, but you do risk criminal charges if you fail to comply. So I don't know how strict the state is going to be on that. There is a lot of talk about trying to educate people in the warning, so I don't know if necessarily anybody's going to have a heavy hand that is operating at the state, but that's not our call here at the city. I mean, just understand that only those officials deputized by the governor or by the Georgia Emergency Management and Homeland Security Agency are authorized to mandate the closure of any business, establishment, corporation, nonprofit that is found to not be in compliance with the executive order. So again, local law enforcement cannot even do that. That is reserved for state officers and those deputized by the governor. And we don't have any of those. So again, I would love for there to be a little bit more information from our level, a little bit more ability to interpret, but that's not our call. And so we'll do the best we can to convey information as we get it. We did issue a press release on Friday, which kind of laid it all out, but you can, on our website, there are links to the governor's actual executive order and some other documents related to his executive order that may help you understand what's going on. Couple other things. We have had some questions over the weekend about the ability to go to state parks or to play sports outside, specifically like golf, which you do tend to be able to maintain a 6 feet of distance. And I can say that from guidance from the state, I can confirm that you can visit state parks. State parks will be open. And you can play sports outside, including golf, again, as long as the gatherings of more than 10 people have at least everybody 6 feet apart. I do know that a number of golf courses are making it to where the golfers are in each one person to a golf cart. And that's how they're helping to maintain the 6 feet of distance. But, again, just understand that if you congregate in state parks or golf courses in violation of the ordinance and don't have the 6 feet of separation, you could be warned to disband and other things. Now, speaking of outside stuff, there are a few things that over the weekend did happen that I can say you need to be cognizant of. One is we had a number of instances over the weekend, at least that I'm aware of, in which there were people, despite the fact that the facility was closed, were playing tennis or basketball. And so again, the tennis would be, you got to make sure that you know whether or not the facilities are open or not. I know some locations are actually taking the nets down because there's just too many people who are just going out there on their own. And look, I get it. It was a pretty weekend, wanting to get out and do something other than just walking around, especially if you have kids. Would have loved to have gone and played with mine, but the facilities that are part of my subdivision are closed for use, regardless of whether it's family or not. So just be cognizant of that and just know the rules and look for signage that's out there on whether facilities are closed. And again, basketball, I mean, yeah, somebody can argue that, oh, we're just playing horse and we're maintaining our distance. But, I mean, come on, the 6-foot rule on that one is pretty hard. And that's definitely an activity when you start getting into, playing a game where you're way too close to another individual. And again, with anytime you're playing with a ball that more than one person can touch, there is the potential to transfer germs that way. I know tennis, there is no evidence that the virus cannot survive for a period of time on a tennis ball. So if you're touching the same tennis balls, you could spread it. In basketball, same thing. So that tends to be why the closure of some of these facilities is just because you can pass germs. A couple other things that have come to our attention here at the city. A lot of questions about, so we've got this coronavirus, this COVID-19 out there, which tends to, when it comes to medical conditions or maladies, tends to be the one that people are talking about. But as we all know, other ailments, injuries, and other things continue to exist. People still need to go to their medical provider for other, there's maybe they just have a cold or the normal seasonal flu. Maybe they got injured. Maybe they cut themselves and need stitches. Things that don't necessarily need you to go to the ER or a hospital, but yet you still need a medical provider. And a lot of it also is prescription medication that in some cases they're controlled substances that do not allow medical providers and clinicians to write prescriptions without having to see you each time. And so in those cases, I know people were talking about, well, what do we do? What are the local practices doing to maybe help mitigate the people who may have symptoms or have symptoms of COVID-19, but it actually may be a different respiratory ailment like just the flu or a cold or a respiratory infection that's not COVID-19. I do know that a lot of the medical facilities in the area are taking measures to separate the different types of patients, meaning ones that are there for reasons other than to be seen because they have symptoms similar to COVID-19, and then the ones at COVID-19. I know Suburban Medical Center here in Peachtree Corners is one. Stat Medical just north up in Johns Creek are another that I have seen recent discussions on social media about how they have taken their waiting rooms and separated so that those who are there for visits other than, again, suffering from ailments and symptoms that are similar to COVID-19 can go in there and not have to interact with those. So if I sliced my finger or I needed to, be seen to have my prescription refilled or a physical for something, I can go in and be in a waiting room that's separate from those who have symptoms and may end up having COVID-19, or it's just symptoms that are ones in which you could, they're contagious, and the regular flu is one of them. So I'm sure that there are others in the city that are doing that beyond the two that I mentioned. I just had seen things from them specifically laying out that yes, their internal operations are different now because of it, and you can get in there, and if you're there to be seen for reasons other than maybe having respiratory ailments, that you can be segregated from those who are there for that reason, and so you can feel a little bit safer. So let me end the part of this, which is talking about restrictions, by just saying this. Again, let's all remember to do the right thing. There were, multiple instances over the weekend, especially with younger people who were getting together and socializing at night, not necessarily creating problems, but just probably wanting to have interaction with other humans in a more personal way than over Zoom or WebEx or something like that. But we've had to run off a number of groups of people, again, mostly younger ones, that were in parking lots and just congregating and socializing. And I get it. We're all suffering from lack of that, but the more we adhere to this now, the quicker we can get out of it. And I also know that, I used to be a lot younger and 10 feet tall and bulletproof and thought that, I would never catch any of this. It's not really, just remember, it's not necessarily about you and your ability to catch it, or even your ability to overcome it with your natural immune system. It's the fact that you may actually acquire COVID-19 and then be spreading it inadvertently to people who aren't in a position that they can get over it. So let's just be respectful of that and continue to do the right thing. So I want to end on a positive note. And again, I keep making references on some of these to some of the cool things that I'm seeing out in the community. And it is kind of warms the heart to see companies and individuals stepping up and doing things in unique and unconventional ways. Last Friday, I talked about Taqueria Del Mar and how they had a pay what you can program. We have another business, another food-oriented business called Peachy Corners Cafe. That's right, Peachy Corners Cafe. They are doing something unique. They are doing a trade, a swap. You can go in there and they are swapping food and drink items such as cookies or slushies, things like that. They're swapping that for people bringing in masks or other personal protective equipment to them that they turn around and then give to the medical community. That is, there's a shortage of. So Peachy Corners Cafe swapping out free food and drink from their establishment for people bringing in personal protective equipment. Another example of a local business that's stepping up and trying to do what they can for our efforts in getting past this COVID-19 pandemic and getting back to business as usual. So remember, these businesses take advantage of the fact that they're open for curbside, takeout, and in some cases delivery. Share the wealth. Those of you who can afford it, even if you got food or drink at home, help these small businesses out, especially right now where we're still waiting on a week or so for them to get some of this $2 trillion stimulus package that Congress passed. They're not quite available yet, so help these companies get through. So again, thanks for everything you're doing out there. Thanks for being the great community that you are, that I'm proud to be a part of myself. Take care, be safe, and God bless all of you. Thanks.